There's a thick, black liquid that seals any concrete or brick leak permanently. It costs exactly $2 at your local hardware store, and it completely stops water intrusion from the inside out. It does not peel off. It does not crack under pressure. It simply does not fail. Elite construction crews have quietly used this exact compound on massive bridges and underwater tunnels for over 100 years without a single structural leak. The heavy concrete foundations sealed with it back in the 1940s are still completely, undeniably bone dry today, decades later. And right now, as you watch this highly effective liquid is strictly banned in 11 American states. It is not banned because it is highly dangerous to apply in your backyard. It is not banned because it somehow fails to protect your home. It is banned for one simple, undeniable reason. It works far too well. A $2 permanent solution to a $40 billion residential problem simply cannot be allowed to exist on hardware store shelves. So, the corporate machine stepped in. They systematically classified it as a probable environmental hazard. They heavily lobbied state governments to restrict civilian access, and they aggressively replaced it with expensive, diluted, synthetic alternatives that cost $30 to $80 a bucket and require constant reapplication. This is the suppressed story of coal tar sealant, the raw industrial liquid that built America's infrastructure, only to be buried by corporate greed. Welcome back to The Vault. If you are tired of being forced to pay thousands for engineered failure, hit the subscribe button. Let's dig into the $2 secret the industry locked away.
To understand why this liquid is so heavily guarded today, you have to look at what it accomplished in the past. In 1902, the massive industrial city of Pittsburgh faced a catastrophic crisis that threatened to entirely collapse its municipal water system. Thousands of feet of underground brick and concrete pipes were actively leaking. The surrounding soil was heavily saturated, and the massive stone foundations were literally rotting right through. A brilliant civil engineer named George Bartholomew proposed a radical solution that the heavy construction industry had quietly known about since the 1850s. Coal tar. Coal tar is a thick, incredibly dense black liquid created by burning coal, heavily used to waterproof wooden naval ships since long before the American Civil War. Bartholomew's desperate crews painted every single failing foundation wall with it. They sealed every massive pipe joint. They coated every single tunnel wall deep underground. Within exactly 6 months, every single leak had completely stopped. They were not just slowed down or temporarily reduced. Every leak was gone, permanently. The Pittsburgh water system successfully ran without a single infiltration problem for the next 47 consecutive years without ever needing reapplication. By 1920, applying raw coal tar sealant was the standard, unquestioned practice in every major American construction project, without exception. The engineers of the Panama Canal heavily used it on every single underwater lock and chamber surface. The New York City subway system used it to seal every dark tunnel wall they built. The Hoover Dam used it across its entire downstream face. Heavy engineers called it the ultimate permanent solution to water intrusion. It was not a temporary patch. It was a chemical, permanent bond.
Here is the exact science that makes this $2 liquid chemically irreplaceable, and why modern store-bought paints are an absolute scam. Coal tar contains incredibly dense polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. When you apply this dark liquid to a porous surface like concrete, cinder block, or brick, these heavy compounds do not just sit on the surface. They penetrate deep into the microscopic pores of the masonry and violently react with the moisture that is already trapped inside. They literally crystallize into a dense hydrophobic matrix directly inside the wall. Water absolutely cannot pass through a fully crystallized internal surface. It cannot break through under immense hydrostatic pressure, and it will not degrade over decades of severe weather exposure. This barrier does not sit on top of the material like a layer of rubberized paint. It physically becomes a permanent part of the concrete's molecular structure itself. That is the core difference between coal tar and everything else they try to sell you today. Modern, expensive sealants form a weak surface film that will inevitably blister and peel off when the water pressure builds up behind it. Coal tar forms a permanent internal structure that never, ever fails.
By 1955, coal tar was universally available to the American public. Local hardware stores sold it by the heavy gallon for under $2. Midwestern farmers sealed massive grain silos with it. Everyday homeowners successfully sealed their leaky basements with a single, cheap coat. A single gallon waterproofed an entire foundation wall completely and permanently. Then, three massive corporations decided to change everything. In 1961, Sika, W.R. Grace, and United States Gypsum filed jointly to petition the federal government for materials research funding. They publicly called it a noble initiative for safer construction materials. What they actually built in the shadows was a highly lucrative replacement market for coal tar. They introduced expensive polymer-based sealants requiring licensed expensive installers. They introduced fragile crystalline membrane systems requiring special proprietary tools. And most importantly, every single one of these new products required full reapplication every 3 to 7 years. But how do you force the public to stop buying the $2 permanent solution? You regulate it out of civilian existence. In 1993, the EPA officially classified coal tar as a Group B2 probable human carcinogen. Here is what the official report will never explicitly explain to you. This terrifying classification was absolutely not based on any residential application exposure data. It was based entirely on studies of industrial workers inside coal tar distillation plants who breathed raw, concentrated coal tar vapor for 8 hours a day for 20 to 30 consecutive years inside enclosed factories. The chemical exposure level of an industrial factory worker inhaling concentrated fumes daily is absolutely not comparable to an everyday homeowner applying a diluted sealant to an exterior foundation wall outside exactly once a decade. The science simply does not support treating these two events as equivalent.
But federal regulation does not require scientific equivalence. It only requires a hazard classification to trigger a ban. Once that classification existed, the corporate lobbying aggressively started. California completely banned residential coal tar use in 2001. Washington State followed with a strict ban in 2004. Minnesota, Wisconsin, and 7 additional states quietly followed over the course of the next 12 years. The massive waterproofing industry heavily funded every single state campaign to restrict coal tar access directly to residential consumers. They didn't do it because they genuinely cared about a highly flawed carcinogen study. They did it because they desperately needed to eliminate the $2 competitor that consistently outperformed their $40 product lines. You cannot patent raw coal tar. You cannot build recurring revenue around something permanent that costs $2 per application and never needs redoing.
If you are dealing with a wet basement or a leaking foundation, here is exactly what you can actually do right now at home to bypass the industry. Step 1. Identify your exact leak source. Before applying anything, touch the wet concrete surface immediately after heavy rain and note the timing. If water aggressively appears within 2 hours, you have active infiltration. If it appears after 24 hours, it is slow capillary absorption. Both are fully, permanently solved by coal tar in the 39 legal states today. Step 2. The legal loophole. If you live in one of the 11 restricted states right now, do not panic and do not hire a contractor. The absolute closest performing legal alternative is sodium silicate, commonly known as liquid glass. It is readily available online for under $3 per liter delivered. Just like coal tar, it aggressively penetrates porous materials and crystallizes completely inside them. This is the exact method the U.S. military relied on during World War II to seal underground field bunkers and forward water storage tanks. Step 3. Clean the surface completely before any application. Remove all existing rubberized sealant, peeling paint, and white mineral deposits with a wire brush. The compound requires direct, raw material contact to successfully penetrate the pores. Step 4. Apply the liquid in 2 distinct coats for maximum penetration depth. Apply the first coat very thin, actively pressing it into the surface with a stiff masonry brush. Wait 4 full hours. Then apply a second, heavier coat, ensuring you cover all visible pores. Step 5. Never apply this below 40 degrees Fahrenheit ambient temperature. The internal crystallization process requires ambient heat to bond fully and correctly. 1 single gallon of this mixture heavily treats approximately 50 square feet of surface area. A typical basement wall costs under $8 to seal completely.
A licensed professional contractor will easily charge you between $800 and $3,000 for that exact same square footage. The material difference between both outcomes is about $2. The knowledge difference is exactly what you just watched. This critical survival knowledge did not just disappear naturally over the decades. It was intentionally buried under $40 billion of aggressive lobbying, regulatory capture by the chemical industry, and meticulously engineered obsolescence. The massive bridges sealed with coal tar in the 1930s are still standing strong today. The subway tunnels coated in 1940 are still bone dry inside, while carrying millions of gallons of water directly above them daily. The product still exists, and it is perfectly legal in 39 American states. The knowledge of how to use it was just made incredibly inconvenient to find. If this vault opened something for you today, subscribe to the channel and share this video. Every single share preserves what the billion-dollar industry tried so hard to erase. Stay tuned. The next vault opens soon, and what is inside is even heavier.